Hey there, and welcome to my favorite games I played during 2021. So looking back this year, I played played and finished and completed with an intermixed within that 61 games, starting January 2nd all the way until December 31st. I played games every single month, some more so than others. But I figured I'd let you guys know what I thought my 10 favorite games I played this year was. My lists are a little bit different than most places. Most places will go over the games released exclusively in 2021. I have the opinion that you should cover some of the games that were released previously. So with that in mind, and remembering how my system works, we'll start off at number 10, which is, believe it or not, Cyberpunk 2077. So I know it's a pretty controversial pick, but I think looking back at all the games I've finished this year, it definitely stood out. I maybe not for the right reasons, maybe not for any good reasons at all, but I, at the end of the day, came away enjoying this game more than I thought I was going to when I first began it, when it came out in December of 2020. It's a funny story. I picked this game up on PS4 before they delisted it. I got it release day, but I actually had a mouth surgery that day it came out. So I tried to play it and I couldn't really get into it. And I was a little loopy, and I only ended up playing probably an hour or so the first day it came out, and I don't think I made any progress at all. But for sure, when it came out, that was all that I played. It took up all my time. I think I've sunk in about 40 something hours. I'll have on the screen how many hours I put into each of these titles. It's either 40 or 60. I can't quite remember. But I played enough where I did run into crashing. I did run into weird textural bugs, a lot of weird gameplay bugs. It's not a polished game. and some could argue that there are games on this list that are better, and I would agree. But there's still something about Cyberpunk, and maybe it has that CD Projekt Red charm to it. Maybe it's just fun. I don't know, but there's something there that when I finished the game and the credits started rolling, I said, you know what? As much as that ending sucked because I got the bad ending, I still came away really liking this, and I had a really good time. I did finish it super early on in the year, 2021. I finished it January 3rd, so I finished it super early in the year, but it definitely was an experience that carried throughout the year, whether it's experiencing Jackie in the very beginning of the game, or just getting to develop my V character, the main character you play as over the course of the game. It's really cool, and I'm genuinely excited to play the PS5 version, only because I want to see the improvements made and see if there's any reason to go back to it. I really, really want to experience this game again, and my PC at the time wasn't up to snuff, and even now I do have a copy on PC, but I just my GPU is too old and it won't be able to run it, and I won't be getting a new GPU probably for the next couple of years. So PS5 it is, and I think that's enough reason to keep that excitement going and know that they're improving it, and to know that the experience I had was fun but will be even better in the future. Even if it doesn't make sense, I think Cyberpunk more than deserves a spot at number 10. Next up at number 9 is Kena Bridge of Spirits. This was actually a bit of a sleeper hit for me. I went into it knowing it'd probably be pretty fun, right up my alley, but I didn't expect to like it as much as I did. Now, it got hard. It was a pretty tough and challenging game, and I will admit I had to bump down the difficulty at the very end with the final boss. That guy, I just could not figure out his timings, and even when I did figure them out, it was still hard to judge, and being in the higher difficulty, it just took too much of your health away, and I wasn't able to do it. But scaling back and going to I think basically easy. I'm pretty sure it was easy. I was able to to finish it up in, I think, the first or second try after that. So it was a really fun time exploring this world where this village and the outlying area had been corrupted, and all the villagers have died, and you're a spirit guide, essentially, helping them get to the other side. It was a really, really interesting tale, and you tackled 3 or 4... It's been a little while since I played. You tackle 3 or 4 main story elements and help these individuals overcome their grief and help their family members that are being tied down to the world and being corrupted at the same time. So it's a really, really powerful story, and I had a fantastic time with it. And to think that this developer, before this, their first thing they made was a Majora's Mask animation or short film or something to that effect, which blows me away. And if I remember correctly, I think they're called Ember Labs. Again, it's going to be down below. I should have all this information, but I was blown away. The game looks like a Pixar movie, and I think it's on PS4 and PC as well, so it's out there on various consoles, but I did play it on the PlayStation 5, and having the haptic controller with the DualSense along with the force-sensitive triggers or whatever they're called, the haptic feedback triggers, it really was a fun experience, and reason it got put at number 9. And next up at number 8, we have Spider-Man Miles Morales. So that's another game that I finished fairly on in the year. It was one of my first PS5 games. But before I could allow myself to finish Miles Morales, I had to go back and play through Spider-Man Remastered on the PS5. Spider-Man Remastered was a game I totally skipped over during the PS4 generation. I'd fallen out of love with the PS4, and it didn't really start getting back into it until The Last of Us and Ghost of Tsushima came out, or Last of Us Part 2 came out, and Ghost of Tsushima. So there was a few games that slowly started pulling me back in, and then of course with the PS5, my biggest thing was always 60 FPS. I just need 60 FPS. 30 usually makes me feel kind of wheezy. Granted, you can do it right, and it doesn't, but most of the time it just makes me feel a little weird and queasy. But with the PS5, knowing that I could play the remastered Spider-Man along with the new Miles Morales had me hooked. And of course, as soon as I got to Miles, instantly platinumed it. I went through and played 2 playthroughs right away, the minimum for the platinum, and no issues. I had an amazing time with it. Spider-Man Remastered was fun. I got a platinum on that. But I think swinging around rather as Miles was a lot more fun. It was there was a little bit more character and flair. I know Miles is a different person than Peter Parker, and it even shows with their abilities and their swinging habits, I guess you could say, or their swinging styles. Miles doing tricks and Peter being just more clean overall. But I had a really good time with it. It was really, really amazing seeing these characters brought to life. Characters that I have loved forever. Maybe not Miles forever, but obviously Spider-Man forever. And being a big sucker for the series, finally, after all this time, I'm really excited to see what the sequel holds and hope that we do get a dual Spider-Man system, I guess you could say, kind of thinking something similar to GTA 5 where you get to play as 3 characters, whereas in Spider-Man 2 you get to play as either Miles or Peter, or just given the story you kind of hop back and forth. So I'm really excited to see where the series goes from here, and I'm looking forward to Spider-Man 2. Number 7, we have Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD. So I did a cleanup crew with my brother on this game when we both finished it, and I went into this having super low expectations and was absolutely blown away. I really, really liked this version of Hyrule. And, it's not even Hyrule, it's pre-Hyrule. This is the first game in the timeline, which is mind-blowing. It's the first Link, it's the first Zelda, so it's pre-Hyrule, but it's Hylia, and you get to see all of what comes to be, the floating islands in the sky and the creation of the Master Sword. It is a really trippy and fun game, and I love all the little mechanics, even the motion controls, which that's how I played all the way through. My brother ended up playing with just regular Switch controls, regular handheld controls, but I wanted to capture how it originally was meant to be played, and and yeah, it wasn't great. There was times where I was getting really upset with the Joy-Cons being out of whack or not exactly working like I want them to, but it was still a good time at the end of the day, and I definitely dedicated a ton of my time to playing this game. When this game popped up, I think it was the only game I played for that month. I can actually find out. Yeah, no, okay, so yeah, looking at my list of games I have, you guys can see them listed in the description down below. In August, that was the only game I finished, because at the beginning I started, or I guess it must have been the end of July I started this game, or whenever this came out, and it took me about half a month to finish it. And then I took a break, or I think I spent time editing that video, and it just took me a while to get back into completing games. But it was a really fun time. I don't hold it in such high regard that it's like better than Ocarina of Time or Wind Waker or my personal favorite Twilight Princess. It definitely is one of the lower tier Zeldas, but I don't think it's as bad as everyone says. And I think the HD port, or HD remaster rather, is a good point to experience it. I'd imagine it's pretty rough seeing it on the Wii nowadays at 480p. But this is definitely a really fun way to experience it, and I definitely say check it out. Number 6, we have Dragon Quest XI-S, Echoes of an Elusive Age Definitive Edition. Now, I played this, for the most part, all the way through on PC, but I did take some time to go and play it on the Xbox One, because I did play this on Game Pass, and they had, I think this was part of their Play Anywhere is what it's called, so your save files transfer from PC to Xbox and back to PC in any which way. So this was actually my first Dragon Quest game. No, that's a lie. I did play Dragon Quest VIII on the PS2 years ago, but I never finished it. I picked it up probably to 2004. I would have been in 5th grade. So I picked it up about 5th grade, 6th grade time, and I was a little in over my head. I'd never played a game like that up to that point. I think after that I picked up Final Fantasy X and got a little bit further into that, but still had a hard time getting into JRPGs that weren't Pokemon. So this one, being the first Dragon Quest that I've finished, felt really good. It was a lot longer than I thought it would be. I mean, I knew it was going to be long, but I spent well over 100 hours with this game, and I don't regret a single minute of it. It definitely was the game that I spent the most time with last year, and one of the ones I had the most fun with. I fell in love with the characters. The environment and the world was so well built out. Of course, the monsters, made by the great Akira Toriyama, was charming as all hell, and it's definitely something that made me really excited to go back and play the previous games. And because of that, I currently have Dragon Quest 1 on my Switch, and I'm going to go play that at some point in anticipation for Dragon Quest 12, which was announced, but I'm guessing is probably not going to be out until at least 2023. I'd imagine probably 2024. Maybe we'll see something more this year. I believe it was last year during a Dragon Quest event we saw a teaser video, but nothing beyond that. But just the character dynamics, the story, the trials and tribulations. There was at times where I was like, how are these people going to get out of this situation? And of course they always made it. And it's just little charming things, like your characters bickering and bantering with each other, and it felt so wholesome at the same time having wildly ridiculously high stakes. And of course taking down monsters that are ridiculous. But I think that kind of goes with the JRPG Dragon Quest territory. So that was really fun. I had a great time with it, and I definitely suggest you guys should go check it out. And here we are at the top 5. Number 5 was Death's Door. I sat on this game for a long time, really didn't know what to think of it. I knew it was a Souls-like kind of game that starred crows and was isometric and charming, but also difficult. And I heard nothing but praise about it. And this was before the PlayStation version was announced. So my only places to play this was on the PC or the Xbox. And at the time, I was like, I only really have my Xbox to play Game Pass, so I don't really want to pick up any games on that system that I know I won't play but once. So I decided to pick it up on Steam, had a great time with it. Of course, the characters were charming, as I anticipated. And of course, the crowd favorite being Pothead, a man with a literal pot for a head. And seeing him and the curse brought upon him by his grandmother, who we ended up killing, because that's the whole shtick, is you have to play the Grim Reaper, play death itself, and go claim the souls of your enemies in order to open up a door, death's door. And I just thought it was charming as all heck, and it was challenging. It was pretty challenging, but nothing that isn't surmountable and nothing that can't be relatively easily overcome once you get familiar with how the dodging mechanics works and the iframes within that, and just respect the game. You get pretty good at it pretty quick. So I think it's definitely something everyone should check out. And now that it's on PlayStation, more people can. So that's always an option too. I believe there's a PS4 and PS5 option. I could be wrong. It might only be PS4, but I don't recall. But yeah, the PC was the way to go. I definitely am probably going to play it again, either on the PlayStation to get a platinum, or I will play it again once the Steam Deck comes out, because I have a spot waiting in line for me with the Steam Deck. So I'm excited to give that a go. And at number 4, getting close to the end, Psychonauts 2. This was another game that I did a cleanup crew with my brother for. And it was a game I had waited many, many years for. I had finished Psychonauts 1 on the PS2. Oh man, this is probably 2007? 2006? It was a couple of years, I think, after it came out. And I was beyond excited, and I fell in love with the characters. That's one thing that is pretty consistent with me, is if the game has great characters and interesting dialogue, I'm probably going to fall in love with it. But Raz and the crew and everyone at camp made it easy to fall in love with them, and it was quirky, and it was interesting and different, and everything that I love in a video game. And to see the sequel kind of follow up with that, even 15 years later, not missing a beat, I couldn't get enough. I absolutely loved it. I played it on the PS4, where I also did start it on Steam, or not Steam. I started it on Game Pass on PC, and I had issues with stuttering. It was probably because I was playing at too high settings, and I could have bumped things down, but knowing that I could get 60 FPS on the PlayStation 5 through the PS4 version, I was like, you know what, that's enough for me to go play it on PlayStation. So that's where I played it this time around, and I had a really good time. It was, like I said, everything that the first game was, but better. You had better graphics, better jokes, better characters, I think, overall. The story behind a lot of these characters were a lot more reasonable. Reasonable might be a good way to put it, but definitely a little easier to follow for sure. And of course, the penultimate level, my favorite level, was the one where you went to Jack Black's character and went in his mind, and it was all the 70s trippy band aesthetic, the hippie vibe. I fell in love with that level, and I think it's a crowd pleaser. I think everyone who talks about this game definitely comes away loving that level. But even the end game, just the little jokes about amusement park rides and being this tall. I mean, easy jokes to make sometimes, but done in funny and interesting, unique ways. And definitely just hits home and makes you remember why the folks over at Double Fine and Tim Schafer and all them, they can make a hell of a game. Make a hell of a game, that's for sure. And at number 3, we have Toem. Now, I was kind of aware of this game. I remember seeing it during I don't remember if it was an E3 press conference. E3, did E3 even happen last year? Everything's been a blur these past few years, so I don't remember. It might have been an indie game conference or something. I'm not quite sure. But I saw Toem and I was like, oh my god, this is right up my alley. Recently, within the past few years, I've really fallen in love with the short indie game. Anything indie, unique and challenging and new and just creative, I've really fallen for. Now, granted, I'm a fan of Halo and big budget mainstream titles, of course, but there's something so charming about Toem and games like it, where in this game you play as some kind of character. I don't remember if it was ever said what kind of character it was. Just the main character, and you go on an adventure to find and experience Toem. Now, obviously, I won't say what that is in this, but needless to say, it brings a lot of light and life to the character's life after they witness it. And up until that point, you go from town to town and village to village, and in one case, a city, and take pictures of stuff, and you do photo challenges, and it's all about recording your experience to reach Toem. And I think it was super cute, and I had a really good time with it. And again, unique and charming with an interesting mechanic. Easy platinum. It took me a little bit to figure out 1 or 2 challenges, and I did have to use a guide, I think once or twice, but it's a fairly approachable platinum or 100% completion criteria, and I think it is something that everyone should check out. It definitely was my top 3, was my 3rd favorite game of the year, and I don't regret a second getting the platinum and playing through it. Next up at number 2 is Guardians of the Galaxy, played through on PlayStation 5. So I went into this, I think like everyone else, kind of expecting kind of a cruddy game, if I can be so blunt. I think everyone went into it thinking, oh no, here we go again. This is going to be a repeat of the Avengers game, which I'll admit, not that great, but I still had a decent time playing through the single-player campaign of. But I think most people thought, oh, yep, it's going to be the same exact experience. It's going to be hollow and shallow. And when it wasn't, I think everyone was a little dumbstruck. I know I was for sure. This is another game that I did get the platinum for. These top 3 are all on PlayStation and all have the platinums on my account. And to say that this game had good dialogue is, I think, a disservice. It has some of the best dialogue in any game I've ever played. I would argue that this experience is better than the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. Now, I've never been a particularly huge fan of the Guardians of the Galaxy. I think sometimes they can be a little annoying. And as backwards and weird as it sounds, I think Rocket is, in the movies, one of the best characters, most interesting characters. And definitely in this title as well, you do experience that. But I think it does a better job of, compared to the movies, of balancing out each character and giving them their own moment to shine. And granted, with longer form media like video games, you can flesh out each character and give them their each moment in the sunlight or the spotlight. And for sure, getting that experience and learning and seeing the team grow really is something else. And I don't know, it hit me right in the feels, man. I had it was pretty emotional and pretty powerful towards the end of it, as weird as that sounds about a Guardians of the Galaxy video game. But it definitely was. There was some somber moments, and you felt it. You felt that character's pain. And with all that said, the only thing holding this game back, I think, from being number 1 for me is the combat. It's pretty boring, to put it bluntly. It can be really repetitive, and I think if they do a sequel, which I really hope they do, I think spicing it up with the ability to play as other people on the team would be a great inclusion. Maybe being like, okay, the 4 of us are going to tackle this mission or this part of the story, and you get to pick your squad. Kind of something similar to Mass Effect. I mean, granted, that's 3 characters? I believe it's 3 characters, Mass Effect. But maybe for the next Guardians game, it could be 4 or something that go out on a mission together, right? Something to that effect. And I think just fleshing out the combat system and creating a true like combo system and giving Star-Lord a little bit more interesting mechanics other than just pew 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 load, heavy shot on reload. So there's just certain things that I think that they can do to flesh it out and really develop what's there, because I think what they have is fantastic as long as they can continue the great writing into a sequel. And if they can do that, whenever that game comes out, if that game comes out, gonna be definitely my game of the year. Unless something bigger comes out, of course. Such as our number 1, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart on the PS5. At this point, I'm basically a Ratchet & Clank stan. I have most of the platinums. I've played all of the titles. Yes, all of them. I think with exceptions of like weird oddball things. I think there was things on phones or cell phones at one point. I didn't play those, but every mainline entry on the home consoles and the PSP I have played. I don't think the Vita had anything. I'm running through my mind. Nope, I don't think there was. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But I have played all the experiences there are, and I love every single game, mostly. All for One is a little weird. Don't really care for that one much. But Rift Apart, again, I sound like a broken record at this point. The characters, phenomenal. The story writing was perfection. The character dialogue between characters for the Ratchet series has grown and grown and grown over the years, from the originals, super simplistic cutscenes, to the future titles having, if I remember correctly, have dialogue options and more of a back and forth kind of discussion-based conversation system, where this one just feels like a movie. It straight feels like a movie. I loved the inclusion of Rivet. I really hope that they continue using her and expand on the dimension stuff. It seems like in the sequel we could be finding more Lombaxes, including other ones beyond Rivet and Aslan from the future series. I'm stoked to see where this series goes. I know we probably won't see another one for quite a while because Insomniac is swamped right now with not only Spider-Man 2, but as well as the next Wolverine game. And I think there's a third title that they're working on that they haven't announced. Or maybe they haven't, I just can't remember. But by every measure, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart in any other year, I think would probably be my number 1, just because of how much I love the series, how much it means to me, and genuinely how good the game is. It's fun. Wild and crazy weapons, blowing stuff up, going through a great story. It's made for me. It's made for me and anyone that shares similar interests like that. I loved it to death, and I just don't think there's much else I can say. So there we go. That was my top 10 games I played in 2021. Now, a reminder again, if you've made it this far, that these don't necessarily have to have released in 2021. They were just games that I experienced in 2021 and had a really good time with. So, any of these 10 interest you? Did you give them a try? What did you think? What were your lists like? Let me know in the comments down below. And with that, thank you for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.